Senator Debbie Stabenow is now with us on the Oakland County MegaCast. Senator Stabenow, thank you for being with us today.
Well, I'm so glad to be able to be with you.
How are you? How's your team doing?
We're working hard. I mean, fortunately, staying safe. We do everything remotely, but you wouldn't know it if you call the office or email. Somebody's picking up the phone, we're responding. Our team is doing a wonderful job, but like everybody else, we're just having to do it differently.
In the past week and really in the past few days, the new COVID-19 mega issue and battleground issue has been the distribution of federal CARES Act dollars to the education system in the United States. Secretary DeVos detailed her interpretation of those CARES Act funds earlier on in the week, in Michigan and 4 other states reacted, filing a lawsuit against the Department of Education,
Right,
claiming that this interpretation would unlawfully distribute over $13 billion in aid, and that in effect would support too much the private institutions. What are your thoughts on Secretary DeVos's interpretation of federal CARES Act distributions? Is it beneficial to our schools, or is it hurting our children?
Well, I think the most important thing is it's not what the law says that we passed. And so we want all of our children to be safe. We want all of our children, no matter where they're going to school, to be able to have the support that they need. But what we passed in the bipartisan CARES Act made it very clear that the dollars were going to public schools and were available to private schools based on the number of low-income children in the private school. And so the Secretary of Education changed that definition. So she's just going against what was in the law. So what I'm concerned about is making sure that all of us want our children to go back to school, parents and children and teachers. And as a grandparent, I know how important it is. Businesses, we can't fully open up the economy if we can't fully open the schools. But the bottom line is it has to be safe, that we can't, jeopardize our children or teachers or custodians or anyone else in the school. And so that's why I'm working and have developed a bipartisan bill that would provide the critical finances needed for the schools to be able to do all the things they need to do to make sure they can open safely.
So this bill you are working on, Senator Debbie Stabenow with us on the Oakland County MegaCast. It is a bipartisan bill. You've been working on it with Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana. In addition to the Federal CARES Act and other programs at the federal level that are helping our schools, how would this bill specifically help our schools across the nation?
Well, in Michigan, we know that to be able to safely reopen schools, in total, there's about a $1 billion cost to do that. The national superintendents say it's about $1.8 million per school district, some more, some less. So this would provide the funds for what we now call PPE, personal protective equipment. It would provide the funding to help change the configuration of classrooms so you can do social distancing. And when you do that, that means you need more classrooms. It may mean, you've got to take other rooms and reconfigure them to be classrooms. And when you have more classrooms, you need more teachers and you need more custodians and sanitary equipment. And a school may need a better HVAC system for ventilation. There could be a variety of things. To me, it's providing as much flexibility as possible for local schools to do what they need to do that works for them and for their children in the schools. And so this is a bipartisan bill. House already passed a bill with significant funding. Actually, 55 days ago, they passed what's called the HEROES Act. It's been sitting in the Senate. Senator McConnell has not chosen to bring it up yet. He said he didn't feel a sense of urgency to do that. But boy, do we feel a sense of urgency. And, in my own family, my son and daughter, when they look at their children and they feel a sense of urgency, and teachers and business people and so everybody understands there's not only a sense of urgency about opening the schools, but the timing of the resources. We should have already passed this bill because the schools need time to be able to do the things to physically make the changes or to hire additional staff to be able to operate safely. So the Senate's not in session now for 2 weeks, and I just think um, it's really terrible that we're not even going to be able to try to address this until the week of July 20th. And then my guess is nothing happens till the end of the month or beginning of August. And I think that puts parents who are just, trying to figure out what to do, and schools trying to figure out what to do, puts them in an extremely difficult situation. And it's very unfair that that's the case. So we're trying to do as much as we can. I just got off a phone call with 100 superintendents across Michigan, Zooming away, and we talked about what their needs are, how they need those resources right now so they can make the best decision. They all want to reopen. We all want to reopen. But right now, in the middle of a health pandemic, we've got to make sure our children are safe.
Between the Federal CARES Act funding that would be going to our schools across the nation, on top of that provides funding that is critical to their operations and will certainly help to bridge some of the gaps in budget cuts state to state. The HEROES Act would just be that much more. How much more does the HEROES Act help on top of those to not only make this more functional, for the financial struggle more functional for these schools, but maybe help them alleviate some of the major issues that come along with that?
Sure. Well, we're looking at, it's estimated nationally that about, in order to do K-12 schools plus community colleges and universities, it's upwards of $75 billion across the country. The HEROES Act put in something slightly less than that for K-12. So I think I would like to see that number be more around the national number of 75 billion. And that's what our chair of the Health and Education Committee is suggesting might be the number. We don't know for sure, but it needs to be enough to really make sure there's confidence that our children are staying safe. But in addition to K-12, we know there's somewhere, we understand from our colleges and universities, somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 per student that's needed to address the extra costs and changes around dormitories and cafeterias and classrooms on college campuses and other issues that they need to address on distance learning and so on. So there are additional costs. And the problem is, and I'll just speak for us in Michigan, the problem is, of course, the economy has been down because businesses have had to close to address the pandemic and safety issues and so on. So that means there's less sales tax coming into the school aid fund. There's less dollars available. And we're looking at a huge deficit this year and next for our schools. I mean, understand that that's the case, but it doesn't magically go away. We have to figure out what to do. So that the state right now is taking some dollars and to help the schools, knowing that but they've also been having to do cuts, and they'll have to do more cuts if the federal government does not step up and be the partner that we should be. States and local communities were told at the time this all started that they were the front line. They needed to act, that there wouldn't be a national response, that the states had to act. And we all assumed that meant the federal government was going to have their back and that be able to come in behind with flexible money for the state, for the cities and the counties and the schools. And because there's not been a willingness to do that, the administration has not yet expressed a willingness to do that, and certainly Senator McConnell has not in the Senate. We're in a situation now where folks that were operating in good faith to try to save lives and protect all of us are scrambling now, and it's going to end up in layoffs of people in Michigan, which we don't need more layoffs right now. We need fewer, and reduction of services. Well, it's whether it's first responders or public health, or laying off teachers and bus drivers and custodians and all the other 911 call centers, I mean, whatever it is, all the public functions we have, food inspectors. I mean, all of those important public functions. And the federal government needs to act and play an important partnership role at minimum. I mean, I think there should have been a national federal response in the beginning, but if not, if the states were told to step up then the federal government has a responsibility to be a partner. And because that hasn't happened yet, all those cuts, it's like the trickle down cuts are now happening, and they end up in our schools with cuts in teachers and other important services that our children need.
Senator, if I could shift the conversation just slightly, you've been in politics a long time. Following 9/11, that crisis seemed to unify our nation. We are in this period right now where politics seems to be so divisive, and this pandemic seems to be highlighting the divisiveness in our country. Number one, how hard is that as an elected leader to try to come together in a bipartisan sense to get things accomplished? And
Right.
How do you think this is going to impact the upcoming election?
Well, Ronnie, that's a really fundamental question, right? And first of all, I work across the aisle every day. That's how you get things done. It is much harder in this environment when we have a White House, frankly, that does not value that and actually tries to step forward and attack and punish people in their own party when they work across the aisle. So it has made it much more difficult. When you think about 9/11, I remember that's burned in my brain, I think, as for all of us. I was, at 9/11, 2001, I was coming in my first year as a United States Senator. And I remember how we all came together, and President Bush stepped up and we all supported him. And I remember standing on the Senate steps. All of us came together that evening after that horrible, horrible attack and wanted to show that we still had a functioning federal government, that we were still together as a country. We stood on the Senate steps, Republicans and Democrats, and one of my good friends started singing God Bless America. It was just very impromptu, but we all ended up doing that. It was an incredible experience, inspiring moment where everybody started singing God Bless America. So we can do that. We want to do that, but there's really just, it's actually pretty simple, the reason it's not happening. And it really does start at the White House. We have a president that doesn't value that at all. And he views it as, somehow he benefits by having everybody divided and blaming each other. And boy, is he wrong. So I'm going to continue to work across the aisle and do everything I can. But instead of all of us working together and standing together and having a national strategy and saying to everybody in the country, boy, we know this is a pain. We know that wearing a mask is a pain, and not seeing grandpa and grandma or being able to hug each other like we want to is a pain, and all the other things that have happened to the economy. But you know what? This is the plan, because it's the only way we can deal with this. And the quicker we do it, the quicker we get past it. That's what's happened in every other country. I mean, we're in a spot where we're 4%, a little over 4% of the world's population. We have about 25% of the world's cases and deaths. Now, that should not be in the greatest country in the world here, where we have all this expertise. It's happening because our country didn't start in January like everybody else. There was no national strategy. There was no national testing. It was one case and everybody said it was going to go, the White House said it was going to go away. Well, it didn't go away. It didn't go away anywhere. We just got 3 months behind. And haven't had a national strategy on protective equipment and what we need to do to make things here so we're not dependent on China or anywhere else. And we're paying a price. We are paying a heavy price for it. So, I'm doing everything I can. We all are trying to figure out, how do we deal with where we are? Most important thing is keeping people safe and saving lives and addressing the economy. It's both. People are being hurt economically and hurt in terms of the pandemic. Problem is, you can't address the economy unless you get your arms around this health pandemic. And so it's got to be both. And schools are really at the heart of this, I believe, right now. And so that's why I'm focused on how do we do this safely.
Senator Debbie Stabenow, thank you for being with us today.
You're welcome. It's good to be with you.